Is being live streamed now. Behave. Okay.
Beehive.
Yes.
So alive now.
We are live and alive now. I'm just
Well, thank you everyone
change.
for joining us. Brilliant. That
Yes.
you're kind of not here, but are here, and you'll be watching what we do, listening.
And from now on, we will be, whether it's just Nigel, Sarah Jane, and myself, or whether we're joined by people who are working your way comfortably, excitably, enjoyably, absorbingly through the course. These are our weekly support sessions where you can come along and ask questions, or you can ask questions here or join us, whatever. And we've just been having a chat, haven't we, Nigel, about perfectionism?
No.
What have we been having a chat about then?
Tourette's.
Yes.
How you work out how to live streams. Yeah, we have. Uh, this, like Ruth and I were just saying, like talking, what do we want to like use this hour for? What would be like useful? And Ruth said, like, what do you want to talk about? And I don't know. And then I went, what's interesting to you at the moment? And you started talking about the new piece of software that you've just got. What was that called? Or what is it called?
Canva.
Canva.
Mm.
Something that you can create. You can create like movies, animations, kind of what used to be called infographics. I don't like that term. It's like, and then we got about perfectionism when you were typing in what do you want to talk and you spelled hypnosis with an H.
Mm-hmm.
Capital.
Yeah, I mean, with an H is right. Capital H, unless it's at the beginning of a sentence, not so right.
And you are a self-diagnosed, very honest that you regard yourself as a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
I am the other end of that spectrum.
You are.
Yeah, that's why we make a great team with Sarah
Right.
Jean in the middle, holding it together, stopping it going away. So I think the topic, what we're going to explore, because we haven't planned this, is what about how can you include and void perfectionism in what you do? And this might extend a lot more than in hypnosis, but in your life. There's a lot of things I don't care about. So yesterday I was out, like last night in Blythe, yesterday afternoon, I was going to shops to get some tobacco because I smoke. Hey, and there was a couple of like, I'm saying young, they might have been in their 20s, a couple of young guys out on the bikes, but they were just pushing them and they were walking next to us. And I was eyeballing them, looking at them. And one went, what are you looking at? And I went, oh, I'm admiring your bikes. And he went, well, I'm admiring your like your purple slippers. So I had purple Crocs on. See, like I don't care what I wear. Tracksuit bottoms, top t-shirt. That's me done mostly. I went, oh no. I used to, and I did, do a lot of off-road biking. So like my bike was made, I guess, for like, it wasn't like a racer. Do you remember that old advert where that'll be like sitting on a razor blade, son? It was for a crisp,
Don't remember that.
crisps, but I had like really like amazingly good looking bikes. When I'm admiring your bikes, I like those. And then we got chatting about me Crocs, purple Crocs, and one of them said, like after I said I admire your bike, this guy was very funny. He went, I don't like that. What, you don't like that I like your bike? And he went, yeah, I don't like positive feedback. That cracked me up, that.
Was he serious?
He had a smile on his face.
Right.
So tell me about perfectionism, Ruth.
Perfectionism, specifically from my experience of it.
Not from someone else's.
So I know this person called Ruth. She's recently.
Yeah, so do I.
And perfectionism, yes. there's this idea. So I had a meeting with another birth professional a couple of weeks ago, and they're a lot, I don't know, maybe they're not that much younger than me, but they're younger than me, and they've got this,
What, under 50 then?
yeah, under 50. I'm not quite there yet. I know you are.
I've passed that hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And had, has the Instagram, and then has this iPad thing where she had her head of, like, I was just so in this meeting, had all the stuff there, like brought her office into a pub basically, and was able to just do everything, and then quickly, all right, here we go, here's an Instagram, da, 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 there's a reel, right, that's done, that's posted, okay, let's schedule, not just schedule, but put these appointments up in here now in this scheduling system, which it took me a week to get my head round, Nige, and I still haven't got my head round it.
And you've got that schedule system. That's one of the bits of technology you use.
It is one of the bits of technology I use, and it works for me now. But she was so fast and so good. And also I observed that when she was showing me how to use Instagram, I've got my stepdaughter coming who's 14 next week, and I'm just going to ask. Pardon?
Are you on Instagram?
I am, but I don't really do very much with it because it baffles me, like how to make a reel or how to do things with all of the. I'm definitely not using it to its full potential. And so it is, and so she took a photo, and I was like, oh, I don't like that. She's like, just don't be, you just can't, just do it. Here, take the photo, put this filter on, put these words on, put this music to it, do that, send, done, it's on. What? For me, whatever I put out there, and I don't know if this, thinking about this, because we're going to take this over into hypnosis, but for me, online, the things like that, it feels like it needs to be more perfect, needs to be fully formed before it's presented.
Was it Pink that did a song called You're Fucking Perfect?
I don't know. Maybe I can find it on Apple.
Look it up.
I will. I've got Apple Music. I could do it now, or we could do it later. Presupposition being we can do it, and we will.
You might have to pay for Pink's royalties.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Dropped Netflix. I've dropped Amazon Prime. I've dropped Audible. Like trying to save like money. It's like everything's gone up. It's stuff I can live without.
Yeah. Whereas me,
so this is 200 tracks on it. Got plenty to choose from.
Yeah.
So what's the perfection thing?
I don't know. I don't know where it's from yet.
That's a great word to use yet.
It is. I'm imagining through this conversation, I might get an idea of where it's from. I also know though as well. Oh, Nige, right. So, you know how you say, I'm completely the opposite. I don't care.
All right, I don't think that's true. I think we have different spectrums than that.
Yeah. So I noticed a change in me. You have a very, very specific way of teaching, which I love.
Do you love? Like
I love it.
Yorkshire lass.
I love it. Well, I love it. And I remember you writing things on the board, and sometimes the spelling was wrong.
Deliberately.
Was it?
Sometimes you can't read it deliberately.
Right. And
I'm giving away all my tricks here.
And you just being okay with that. And also I learned a lot of, okay, so when I trained with you, I did the NLP and I did the clinical and the advanced and all of that. And what I loved about it was that flexibility, that permission to go, you don't quite know what's going to happen, that spontaneity.
It's got to
be there. Pardon?
It's got to be there.
It's got to be there. And also at the same time, that perfectionism, before I do what I do now, and I worked with kids making theatre, we'd never just have a script and start from the beginning and work our way through. We'd workshop things, and they would just throw all of these ideas into the mix. You know, imagine like 20 kids and they're throwing all of their own ideas into the mix. We've just gone in with a theme
Yeah.
and workshopped that, and then we've got all these ideas and big sheets of wallpaper with kids writing and scribbling all over, and then you go, right, how's this going to become a performance? And then we take all of that and let it sit.
Yep.
Not go, how am I going to make this a performance? We go, that's going to become a performance because there's some bloody brilliant material here, and what amazing imaginations kids have, and how much they've got to give. And then letting it sit. And I used to drive between Middlesbrough, drive up the A19, and often get stuck in traffic a lot,
Oh, I'm
all
sorry.
the way up. It was all right, because during that time I would just be driving and not even thinking too deeply about it. My mind would be wandering off, and these things of how it was going to fit together would be, without me even consciously thinking about it, slotting in place.
So
So
your
by the
mind
time,
wanders off, and the way I'm looking at you, I think that direction, and then
yeah,
stuff slots together.
yeah. So by the time I got back, and sometimes I'd go for a snooze because I'd got up too early, or sometimes I'd sit straight down at the computer, but invariably I'd start to write, or I'd start to structure scenes using the stuff that's filtered that the children have given, provided, created, and then it would just come about. And there was a perfectionism for me in the structuring of the very first workshop, and then it would descend into chaos, in that it would just be fired with all of this unexpected stuff. And then there was this perfect quietness of trust on the A19 from Middlesbrough to, and that was in its own way perfect. It happened all by itself, and it was a gift that it was that far from there to home. And then there was this perfection of the structuring, but within the it was the structure that was perfect, but the content of it was messy. And so it's almost like there was these levels of times for structure
Yes,
and times for chaos, and
absolutely.
times for structure and chaos within, and that sort of flow through, and you can see how, yeah. And I think for me now, when it comes to being a hypnotherapist and working with a client, there is still now bringing that structure. There's the same sorts of structures happening, in that I've had a conversation with my client and I'm driving,
Yeah.
and things that they've said, metaphors that they've used, are trusting that that's simmering and what comes up is right. And then there's sometimes some structure to some of the questions that
Yes.
we're asking to elicit
Yes.
certain responses or information,
Mm-hmm.
and communication. And then sometimes, there's a structure of a kind of perfectionism sometimes within the trances, with, the induction, going into relaxation, the work that we do, the future pacing, all of that. And within that, sometimes, and I know this is definitely the same for you.
Oh, you know.
I know, because you told me.
All right.
We work closely together, and I've observed it too, that it just flows, that there's no space to hold on to perfectionism when we are working at that level with a client. We've got this perfect structure that we generally know happens, but within that, trust, just like that driving, just like the sitting down in front of a computer and bringing in all of these kids' ideas to make this series of scenes. that you have all the resources, that it will just arise. You
Yeah.
don't need to think about it. You don't need to perfect it. It will just simply flow.
And there's some initial learning, some learning the questions, some like going beyond learning the questions, understanding what their function is. Like what's the function of a question? Like, what do you want? Or how do you see yourself in 5 years? That one, like people from, how would you see yourself in 5 years? Fuck off. There's like no connection there.
Yeah.
The questions we ask are like uncovering, and it's, to me, it's really like uncovering. I think you've just said what metaphors clients use. Something when you earlier on said, I think about it, and then it does this. There's a guy called Ian McGilchrist who you can find tons of his stuff on YouTube. His first book that took him 10 years to write. His background's a clinical psychologist, doctor, etc. He's beautiful to listen to. And what he talks and shares about, to me, is incredibly deep and meaningful. So mastering his hemisphere, it's the difference between the two hemispheres, your left and right. And it's got nothing to do with what I would have shared with you, what my teacher would have shared with me in hypnotherapy. The left brain does this, that, and the other. The right brain does this, that, and the other. All of those are like pretty much fictions. They're useful fictions, just like, you know, like the limbic system. You see it's a tripartite brain with your cortex on top, the limbic one in the middle, and that. It's a useful fiction. He goes so much deeper. His book's on Audible, which I've quit now. It's like I'm saving my pennies. You can still get that. Basically, your left hemisphere, unless you're not left-handed, but like for 80-90% of people, this is the way it works. That's where your language is, and your Broca's area, that stuff, and whatever it's called. And this hemisphere moves the right hand, and the right hand grasps in the world. It takes things that it's like totally utilitarian, trying to get that word out. It's like grabbing and grasping, what can I do with this? Whereas this hemisphere, the right one, this takes a very, very holistic everything and sees the uniqueness in everyone. This hemisphere represents, it doesn't actually see the real world, which is fascinating. This one is in the real world, like all the time. How do you have an experience? Or like you are experience, and then this one processes, and then somehow, if your brain's working right, it goes back to this. And what he's suggesting is, and is like an incredible book, I haven't got a sponsorship from, but I think I should. It's just like, this is like one of the geniuses like of the modern time. He suggests that this time in our period of human evolution, we've went as a species very, very left hemisphere. In other words, not respecting the environment, not like in poetry, music, it's just what you can get. And to kind of reflect back on perfectionism, if you're really in the moment, you're in the moment. I would suggest you are literally not thinking.
There's no internal dialogue about that.
None. And that's how to work with clients. But you've also got to go, for me, you've got to go beyond that, like, oh, I've got to do my best. I have to do this. I have to do that. I've got to do the best for my client. You will be doing the best for your client. You've done all the training. It's in there. John Grinder once told me, whatever you're learning, learn it, do it well. So like that's all the reading, writing, speaking patterns backwards, forwards, and then forget about it because it is internalized. And that's how we're so.
Unless you need to teach it.
I'll just make it up as I go along.
For me, that's now in the past couple of years as I've started to teach more.
You have, and I've seen you teach, and you're brilliant.
Thank you. And part of that teaching process for me was okay, I've learnt it, I've forgotten about it. Shit, I have to re-remember it. Not just re-remember it, but re-remember all of the theory and the underpinning and the being able to explain it so other people can understand it, so they can learn it and then forget about it.
One of my favorite like teaching experiences, and I tend to do this like a couple of times a year for time at college. So I can't remember the name of the course because like it's just irrelevant to me. So you've got first and second year counsellors like learning. I turn up, I've got a whiteboard, and I ask, what are you interested in? And I write all that stuff down. And then I talk about, engage everyone about what those are. I've got no pre-planned at all, like structure for that. And it's it's like 2 or 3 hours where I can just, what do you want? That's it. That's interesting. Oh yeah, we'll link that to that. So I'm going to get, the last time we spoke, did I mention a guy called Drew Weston?
No.
All right. He's like my favorite political pollster, along with Frank Luntz. We've got like very different political views. But basically, Drew Weston starts his lectures with 3 ideas. One is know what networks you're activating. Now, the networks you activate, it's the way memory works. So you could say hypnotherapy, and people might think, oh yeah, trance relaxation. They might think bark like a dog, might think being under control, they might think help, they might think relaxation. As soon as you use that one word, all of those networks activate.
Yeah.
And then it's the positive networks. This is just like what I do when I get the whiteboard at the college. Do. All of these networks activate, they do for me, they do for the students. And there's this beautiful, like, it's a dance. Questions come up, I give questions, they're answered.
It's a dance. You know the metaphors that speak to me, don't you, Nigel?
Certainly do, hun. And that's how good therapy works. You've done your research, you've learned it, and let what comes in that moment, and respond to it too.
Yeah.
Because a dance isn't just, not that I dance, but I will learn to do that for Sarah Jean, so I can dance with her, because she's an amazing dancer. I've seen her dance. It's what networks are activated inside of that. And it's a flow. It's not a static structure. It's not a process, which any really, really good, competent hypnotherapist knows. Yes, you do learn the steps and the structure initially. You do learn every part of that process. You learn it so you don't need to think about it. And then when that integrates with all the other processes that you know, that to me is when you're being a therapist. A really good one too.
Which is why repetition and practice is key.
Just like martial arts.
Yeah. So anyone who's started the course, who's watching this, I know there was a message on the group from someone yesterday who said they couldn't join this one and haven't been able to and want to, and are going to practice with their daughter. Brilliant.
Good.
Brilliant.
Really good.
You can watch the demonstrations, and you can watch them as many times as you like, and you can make lots of notes.
Oh, it's like draw some pictures.
It's
you
my
had
new.
To get that one out.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my word! It's got some stuff on it which is not for public consumption, so I'm not going to show you the front of it. But this is my new notebook. It's called a Remarkable, and I don't need paper anymore. So I'm very, very, yeah, it's nice. It feels nice.
So what's the thing about perfectionist? Is it context dependent?
I think it is context dependent, because...
That was a good question, wasn't it?
It was a very good question. When you know that when we are planning workshops, that I am...
Yes, I do, and I know what you're going to say before you say it.
That I am going, so...
Yes.
at 9:30 a.m. we're going to do this. It will take half an hour. So at 10 a.m. then we do this until we work towards a pause at 11:30 a.m. where people will go, and I've literally got these times.
You just channel there because that was not your voice.
I don't know.
I like it. Maybe that's your inner perfectionist.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Okay, so.
Yeah. We've got it. Keeping that one out.
And in the past, when I developed workshop plans, which was that perfectionism of making sure that we had all of the right drama games, all of the right stimulus, all of the right, in order to draw out, and these children.
There's got to be a structure there.
Yes, yeah.
Flexibility inside of that to move.
And then
great.
I started doing this NLP training with this guy who's just brilliant. And at the time, there was this crossover of coming to the end of that profession and starting this new profession.
Yeah.
You notice where my past and the Zoom's great for this because you can really watch where you're marking stuff and how it's spatially around. And during this time, I thought NLP, this is brilliant, and I started bringing it into the workshops. And there was occasionally towards the end a place where there would be entire classes of year 3 children in deep relaxation at times.
Perfect.
Accidentally. And I noticed a shift in my practice, that my workshop plans became scrawled on a piece. They weren't typed out. They were scrawled on a piece of paper, and there were maybe 3 or 4 sentences or words or drawings, similar to what you've just described at your lectures at Tyne Met College.
Do you remember when we did? I don't remember what it was called, but it was about improvisation. It might have been an improvisation workshop.
Just checking if we've got any.
We sat in a cafe at the River Tyne before we started it, with a couple of people that had come up from London. Hello?
Yes. Was it on the quayside?
Yes. Looking out onto the River Tyne. We did it.
Was Uncle Phil there?
No. Me and you ran it, and we did it in a place very, very close to the River Tyne. That, in all honesty, having looked back at it, it was just like a nightmare for accidents to happen. Like,
I remember now. Yes, the actual.
Yes, there was
building itself. Yes.
Yeah.
Improv for therapists.
Not
we ran
building.
Yes.
And me and you, I think we took like a day to do that. We got a roll of wallpaper.
Yeah. I got terrible sunburn because I was so engrossed in what we were doing and enjoying it so much I forgot to put sun lotion on. I was so in it.
You've probably still got the notes for that, and it really was good. Everyone that came on it had that's when we had like a paddling pool for people to put their heads in water and like do things like that, just to get out of your own way.
Like not just out the box, there was no box.
Exactly. And to me, the ability to do that is the opposite of perfection. Or if I look at that from a slightly different angle, that is perfection. So it depends on like the context. Yes, we run courses, there needs to be a structure, you need to know what you're doing. It needs to be like right for the people that are actually learning from us. But there's also a massive flexibility to go, hey, this goes off tangent, that's fine, we can do that. To be spontaneous, that's a good word, that to improvise on the spot and to just do what comes when it comes. Because for me, and I'm sure for like everyone's students, if there was a rigid, boring structure that you followed and you knew what you were saying word for word, that would be a shite course. It really would. Maybe instead of perfection, what would a useful reframe for you be?
See, now that you've said the specific situations, I know that some situations that perfectionism goes. Like when I'm working with a client, because there is all of that. I've learnt it and I've forgotten it, and I know what happens. I know how it feels to go beneath those layers of I have to do good for my client. I have to, of
You do
just
have it.
working with the person in front of me. And sometimes that means going off in a completely different direction depending on their needs.
Yes.
Um, so we started out with talking about social media and creating little videos or creating any sort of adverts or getting the right font and getting the right picture. And nobody gives a shit. Nobody else apart from me gives a shit if I've slightly chosen the wrong picture for this. I wonder if it's my not yet being fully confident with this new platform of
Perfection
social media. Yeah.
word, it's a nominalization, a reification, whatever you want to call it. It's a left brain activity. It's
Mm,
a presentation of someone.
mm,
It's not in the moment. And it's very, very useful to have that because no one wants to put shit media out. Like, not at all. So that's really, really good. Do you like to have a few revisions? It's like if you're
mm.
writing a poem, like which I occasionally do, doing a story. Yeah, it's good to have a few revisions. You have to revise and then redo it. And then you, okay, I'm not saying you can. Hopefully anyone can let it go and be in the moment. It's like this conversation is not planned. Like I didn't know what we'd be talking about. We talked about like just before we started filming, recording, mentioned like what do you want to talk about? And I don't know. And then we got into perfectionism somehow. So like we're remembering that, but we're also like basically, what is it, off the cuff, off the hoof, making
Improvised in the
that's
moment, in flow,
yes.
sparking, communicating, probably a little bit.
I mean,
Adding
this is that.
randomness.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely got to be.
There was once a time, and I remember this quite clearly because it was a big learning moment for me. And I was meeting with a client, and they'd got their initial consultation questionnaire to me quite late. I'd had an initial
A bit of a
conversation,
warning sign, but not always.
and and as I was looking through, I was going, do you know what? The compass feels right for this.
Mhm.
So the compass is a specific NLP process, and the compass would be useful for this. Okay, and I was like, oh gosh, what's the steps for the compass process? I mean, I could, I've got a general feel of what it is, but do you know what? Before they arrive, I'll give Nigel a ring and just recap on that because he'll know of it. You might not, change things every time. But I phoned you and you were busy with something else. You didn't answer. And so then I thought, okay, so my client arrived. I thought I'll just use the compass process as I remember it because it will be fine and
Yeah,
all of the right resources will come.
it will.
And then as I began to speak with my client as we communicated, it became apparent, and in fact it wasn't even that it became apparent that the compass wasn't as useful as I had initially thought it would be. They started talking about films and specifically their favorite film, The Matrix. This was just in this original, this first, hi, how are you doing, or and those, oh, I watched the film last night, The Matrix, my favorite film, I love it, I've seen it like 10,000 times. Or and then the whole of what we did was worked within the frame of The Matrix, because if we look at the Matrix, the idea of a, that we are not living in a reality, and the reality that there is almost this place where you can change, recode.
Yeah.
And so this whole metaphor or platform or idea of being able to recode for yourself, almost like this control room or room of change. Now, you might not be at that module yet.
Not yet.
I don't know, I can't remember exactly which module it is. Let's have a quick look. It's module 5.
Sank, while you're doing that, one of my original teachers, mentors, and friends, I still have some friends in the NLP world, not many, but people I'm really close with. Well, it's just like whatever that is. He's called Harry Knox. Harry was one of my initial teachers on my NLP practitioner. He's now retired, living up by the sea. He's got a beard like that, and he's an artist now. And he has the best rapport skills for getting on with anyone. He could do with a wash occasionally, but we've all got our weaknesses. And did my NLP with Harry and some other trainers, went on to hypnotherapy, and I still was seeing Harry because I was doing a master practitioner at the same time. I did them all at once. I was just like, this is life changing. This is my journey. And Harry used to say, when he worked with a client, he had no idea what he was going to do. And I'm like, at that time, well, that's not very good. If I'm working with a client and I've got their problem, I probably have. I'll do this process, that one. So I'd thought about 5 different processes, structured processes to do. And then as the years went by, I think that's a song, as the years go by, my whole technique, my idea, my way of interacting with another human being totally changed. And I think, yes, I did need to learn those techniques, and I needed to learn all of the steps, and I needed to learn them in such a way that I didn't think what was the next step. I could just dance through it. Once you've got enough of that inside, enough experience, it's like whatever happens, happens. So like when I work with clients, I have no preconceived ideas. I mean, all the techniques, the tools, half a process here, half a process there, they're there. They really are there. But it's like what you have just said. You thought about using a compass and then talking, interacting. It's like, nah, that's not which way the river's flowing. It's a totally different way. Question for you then. Have you yet recoded, changed what you mean by perfection or perfectionism in a context? Look at Ruth's eyes, just processing.
Hyper aware of my eye accessing cues now.
Hey, Sarah, you did my hair a couple of days ago. She also did my eyebrows. Are they looking good?
They're amazing.
Oh, thank you. Perfect, aren't they?
Yes.
That's right.
And yes.
And that's right.
But I haven't got the words for it. And that's another thing as well. Your clients might not have the words for changes that they're making.
That is amazingly important. I mentioned Ian McGilchrist earlier on, left and right brain. So the right brain does metaphor, does language, not verbal language, because that's done in that hemisphere. There are some things in life that you literally do not want to have the words for, because it goes from like, this is a word, so I've got to use it. You've got like the sacred, and then you try and describe it.
Yeah.
And you really don't want words for stuff like that. At least I don't think so. I agree with Ian McGilchrist. I used to do some really deep meditation. And states that I've had, I neither have words for them, and I don't want words for them either.
Yeah. So when that happens with a client, say we're using, and this isn't in the course, but if you choose to go on to do clinical hypnotherapy with Nigel, myself and Sarah Jane, then you will. The core transformation, so, and when, and whatever, and when, whatever, what does that get to and for you? What do you get to and for you? And sometimes going down, so when a client, you're asking a client to give you the words for something, and they're in a state of trance, hypnosis, and this idea that it's a feeling. It doesn't come from here, it comes from here. It's a feeling first. And the idea you might get the feeling, you probably get the feeling before you get the word for it. You might not even get the word for it. If a word doesn't feel right, just give it a label. You know what that feeling is. It's just a label. It's not a word, it's just a label.
This is
Does that make sense to you, Nigel?
Yes, it does. And we've had to communicate it in words because we can't, like, is Isadora.
Yes.
You heard of her, Isadora Duncan, a dancer, very famous one.
I've studied Isadora Duncan, the dancer.
She did some dance, okay, then you get some, I don't know, gross salesman said, like, yes, okay, but what does that mean? And she goes, if I could tell you in words, I would. I don't know. I had to dance it.
Yes.
It's a different language. It's still a language. It's a communication, but it's not verbal.
You know, when someone describes a dream,
Yeah.
We've described a lot of dreams to each other in the past, and it was colourful, and it was amazing, and it was weird, and it was, and it was all of those things. And I've just said colourful, and my face changed, and I did this, and amazing, and weird, and
My brain can interpret that in terms of what you're doing, like the emotional part, empathetic part.
Yeah.
I call it mirror neurons. That's a bit disputed, but it's a way to get to like literally share consciousness.
But if it didn't if I was just telling you on the phone and you couldn't see me, and it would be like, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then somebody ate their shoe, and then we, that sort of thing, and it's funny, and it's great. But whenever, I don't know if you get this, whenever you explain a dream, whenever I explain a dream, I never feel like I've explained it, like the other person's actually got it, because they haven't.
I'm best not to explain my dreams because someone might think he needs locking up. 1, 2, 3, laugh.
Wouldn't everyone think that if they really looked at their dreams? Really?
Possibly. There's an audio book that's freely available from LibriVox, which I think means free voice, translated into English. They do loads of like very old books that are like in the public domain. You get some people that I guess work for LibriVox, or credit to them, that will speak for it. So I'm listening to Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse at the moment, and this is about like a guy who was like born as a Brahmin, a religious kid, did all the stuff, everyone loved him, he did all the devotions, etc., and he wasn't satisfied with his life. So eventually he gets to meet like the real Buddha, and they have like, he listens to the sermon, he thinks he's the most perfect guy ever, he totally gets what he's saying, as in you do this, so like you've got like the 4 principles and the Eightfold Path, whatever. And his best friend, who's been his best friend with him forever, Govinda, great Pradana, joy, happiness.
It just reminds me of that. Govinda Jaya Jaya, that one, brilliant, right. Brilliant tune. Yes. Right, whenever somebody says that, that plays.
That's the network of associations going on.
It is.
So Govinda has been his friend forever. He's devotee, he follows him everywhere. After they've listened to the Buddha's sermon, and he's done his stuff, his miraculous stuff, Govinda decides to join and become a devotee and seek whatever it is to seek inside that sort of eightfold thought process, eightfold path. But Siddhartha does not. He chooses not to, and he does it for this reason. I mean, it's a book, but books are metaphors and stories. They're deep. He chooses not to because, kind of, number one, he says, I totally get the teaching, I totally get the steps, I totally get this, but for you, Mr. Buddha, you cannot explain to me the moment you got enlightened under the Bo tree. I cannot have that experience through a structured set. And Buddha's like, fine, that's okay. And then the story goes on. I mean, get it on LibriVox if you want it. It's beautiful. I think it's about 5 hours long. Then he goes off on his life. I think Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist, had read that, because that is the same story. It's just told differently.
Mm.
But he could not transmit, how do you do it? You can go through the steps, like you can learn the steps of a dance, Ruth, but unless you actually dance, it's like music.
You're not embodying it.
That's it. That's the word. It's not embodied. How do you get that?
Yeah. And when we're in a training environment and something has been demonstrated
Yeah.
really well, and
So,
then the steps have been talked through really concisely, explicitly, as simply as to someone else to understand them. And then there is still something missing. Go and have the experience. Go and do it.
I figure it's what you can't do this on your own. It's in a training. It's what's communicated extemporaneously, as in spontaneously, as in we've got the steps, all that, but there's something else that happens way beneath the surface of consciousness, and that's like experience that'll then bubble up into a realization that goes back into like, oh, that's what that was.
Mm.
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 Mm. And that little smile, what you're doing there, whatever you just experienced, to me, with your eyes, your mouth, your shoulders, I could use the word perfection, or I could just go like, that's the way it is, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's lush. It truly is.
And I have no words for what's happened in this conversation for me. I will let you know what changes I notice.
Some things are better left without words. Our dog doesn't talk, but I know when he's happy to be with us.
Yeah.
I know when he can chase anyone that comes round the garden. Good boy, come back.
So for people watching this who are doing the online course,
The online course, which is brilliant. And if you haven't bought it already, buy it.
well, they will have done because this is being in
Or
the
is it
group.
just private? It's not
But
good.
I'm wondering, because there's nobody else here, and because I think a lot of what we've spoken about is really useful for anybody that's using any sort of relaxation or therapy or working with clients in whatever capacity, is to share. I'd like, with your permission, Nigel, to share this to other groups where it can be useful for other people as well.
Ruth, I've never and I will never have any of that. You can't share this shit. I don't like that. Like the people that joined, what's his name? Pythagoras's society in very ancient Greek, everything was communally owned. And if it's used to anyone, yes. This kind of conversation for me is maybe like a medium, a media that can hold together, can connect all of the modules in our online course. Yes, share it by all means. Anyway,
Right. Sharify.
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 That used to be a font, didn't it? Sheriff Sans Serif.
I was thinking Sharify, as in
Sharify.
I'm surprised that the likes of social media haven't come up with this new word, Sharify.
Well, trademark it, because
Is it sharifiable?
Ooh.
It's not just sharifiable, it's usifiable, it's essentifiable.
You're sitting on millions, Ruth. I know web domains. .com.co.uk. I used to do shit like that.
Nigel, it's absolutely, as always, lush spending time with you.
It's lovely spending and sharing and just like being in connection with you. And Sarah Jane says love and hugs for you.
Oh, love and hugs, Sarah. Is she watching?
No, she'll be at work on. She has a teaching job.
Right. I wondered if she'd just seen and she was messaging. So anyway, I'm going to stop the live stream now.
right, so I can
I'll
get
see you on
back
the
to
other
my
side,
trip.
Nigel. Okay.
Thank you for watching and listening.
Thank you for watching. Much love.